The diner was small, glowing with soft yellow lights that pushed back the darkness outside. It was late evening, and the air smelled of fried oils, sizzling meats, and spices that most humans had never dared to breathe in. The alien waitress moved quickly between tables, her four hands carrying trays stacked with bowls that steamed with colors brighter than neon. Her skin shimmered with faint blue light, and her golden eyes flicked from one customer to the next, never missing a detail. Then the bell on the glass door chimed, and silence fell over half the room. A human walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, but wearing simple worn clothes that looked like they had seen too many roads. His boots were dusty, his jacket faded, yet the way he carried himself made every eye turn. No human ever came here, not into this part of the city, not into this diner, and yet here he was, pulling out a chair and sitting like he belonged. The alien waitress froze for a second, her hands tightening around the tray she carried. Whispers began at the back of the diner, hushed voices asking what a human thought he was doing here. She forced her steps forward and stopped at his table, her voice carefully polite. "Welcome, traveler. Do you know what kind of food we serve here?" she asked. The human only smiled, a calm curve of lips, and nodded once. "I know," he said softly. "That's why I came." Those words were enough to stir more whispers, the sound like waves crashing softly through the diner. The waitress blinked at him, unsure if he was serious, unsure if he understood the danger of what he was asking for. She held her tablet in two hands and asked, "Then, what will you have?" The human leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting across the alien letters glowing faintly on the menu board. The other aliens watched closely, some pretending to sip their drinks, others outright staring. Finally, his finger pointed at one dish, one that made her chest tighten. The name glowed on her screen. The most dangerous item on the list. She looked up sharply. "Are you sure?" she whispered, her throat suddenly dry. The human only nodded, steady and unshaken. The waitress hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she keyed in the order. When she returned a few minutes later, the diner had grown almost silent. Only the hum of machines in the kitchen and the faint clink of cutlery could be heard. Every pair of eyes locked onto the human's table. Waiting, she set down the steaming plate before him, the dish glowing faintly as if alive, its aroma sharp and electric. The human did not flinch. He picked up the utensil, cut into the meal, and lifted the first bite to his mouth. The waitress leaned forward, her golden eyes wide with fear. Aliens shifted in their seats, some holding their breaths, others already muttering prayers under their tongues. The bite went in. The diner gasped. He chewed slowly, calmly, as if the taste was nothing strange. He swallowed, and then he smiled. "Not bad," he said softly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard. The waitress nearly dropped her tray, her throat locked, her mind racing. No human should have been able to eat that, not without screaming, not without collapsing, yet he sat there, alive, calm, and even amused. The whispers rose louder. "He's insane!" someone hissed from the corner. "No, he's something else," another replied. Voice shaking, the waitress didn't know which one was true. Her golden eyes locked on him, her lips parted to warn him, to beg him to stop. But before she could, the human leaned forward, tapped the table gently, and said words that froze the whole diner. "Bring me another." The silence that followed was deeper than anything the diner had ever known. The waitress stood stiff, her hands cold, her chest trembling. She looked into his steady eyes and realized something she had never seen before. This human wasn't afraid of death, he was daring it. And for the first time in her long life, the alien waitress felt her world tilt. Something strange had entered her diner. Something no chart, no training, no law had prepared her for. The man who should have been lying on the floor gasping was instead smiling, asking for more, and she could not look away. The bell above the door rang again as another customer entered. But no one turned to look, no one cared. All eyes were fixed on the human at the center table, the man who had just broken the rules of life itself with a simple meal. And the alien waitress knew, deep inside, that nothing in her diner or her life would ever be the same again. The plate was gone, every glowing bite swallowed, every strange spice consumed. The human leaned back in his chair, calm as if he had eaten nothing more dangerous than bread. The alien waitress stood frozen beside him, her tray shaking in her trembling hands. Her golden eyes were wide, the pupils narrowing like a predator staring at something impossible. No human should have survived. Not even one mouthful. She knew the stories. She had read the reports. She had watched others collapse after a single taste, but this man sat tall and breathing steady, his face even showing a faint smile. And then he said the words that made her blood run cold. "Bring me another." The diner had fallen silent. The hum of voices was gone, replaced by heavy breaths and nervous rustles. Some aliens sat at the edges of their seats. Others had already taken out their recorders. A few whispered warnings, but no one dared interrupt. The waitress felt her throat tighten, her instincts screaming that she should stop this madness. "Sir, do you even know what you're asking for?" she whispered. Her voice was softer than the hum of the ceiling fans, but in the silence everyone heard it. The human turned his head, his steady eyes locking with hers. "I know," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. "That's why I asked." The tray nearly slipped from her hand. Her heart pounded, her legs felt weak, but her duty forced her to move. She turned back to the kitchen, every step heavy, her mind racing. What if he died here? In front of her, in front of all these witnesses? What if his body collapsed on the floor and she was blamed? But still, she carried the order slip to the cooks. Their many eyes bulged as they read the dish name. "No, not again," one muttered. "The human will not survive this time." She did not argue. She only handed it over, her hands trembling. Minutes passed like hours, and she returned with the plate. The glow was stronger, the smell sharper. Her chest felt tight as she set it down before him. The human gave her a small nod, a gesture of thanks, and then, without a second of hesitation, he lifted the fork. He cut into the glowing meal, lifted a piece, and ate. Gasps filled the diner. The room seemed to tilt. Everyone leaning forward at once, the waitress pressed a hand to her mouth. Unable to stop herself, she watched him chew, swallow, and then wipe his lips with a napkin. "Better the second time," he murmured, his voice carrying across the room. The waitress's knees nearly gave out. Her golden eyes blinked rapidly, her throat dry. Around her, aliens whispered louder, voices filled with fear, awe, and disbelief. "He should be dead," one hissed. "No human can do this," another muttered. Maybe he's not human." A third whispered. The waitress's chest heaved. She stepped closer to the table, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her tone was not angry, not demanding, but full of raw fear. The human looked up at her, his calm eyes steady. "Because I can," he said, as if that explained everything. Her heart raced. She wanted to pull the plate away, to drag him out of the diner, to save him from himself, but her hands would not move, her feet would not step forward. Something about the way he spoke, the way he stared at danger as if it was nothing, froze her in place. It was not courage. It was something else, something deeper around them. The diner was no longer a place to eat. It had become a theater, an arena, a place where history itself was being written. Every eye was fixed on the human and the alien waitress who stood beside him, and every whisper carried the same question. What kind of human is this? The waitress could feel the tension thick in the air. Her golden eyes burned with confusion and fear, but also deep down, something else stirred, something she did not understand. She had served countless customers, seen thousands of faces, but none had ever shaken her like this one man. Her voice cracked as she whispered almost to herself, "You're not supposed to be alive." The human smile deepened. Not cruel, not mocking, but calm. He leaned forward slightly and said, "Life isn't about what's supposed to be." Then he took another bite, his movement slow, deliberate, as if daring the universe to stop him. The diner erupted in gasps again, and the waitress's shocked eyes filled with a truth she could no longer deny. This man was not just another traveler. This man was something different, something greater, and whether it was madness or destiny, the diner and her life would never forget this night. The diner was no longer a diner, it was a stage, a battlefield, a place where every sound and breath seemed louder than normal. The glowing plate sat empty in front of the human, yet his steady posture showed no sign of weakness. His calm eyes looked around as if nothing had happened, as if he had just eaten bread and soup. The alien waitress stood frozen, her golden eyes fixed on him, her hands trembling. She wanted to speak, to stop him, but words would not come. Her chest was tight, her throat dry, and she could feel the weight of every gaze in the room. The whispers had started again, only louder now, spreading like fire across the tables. "He's still alive," one alien muttered, clutching his drink. "No human can survive that dish," another said, eyes wide with fear. "He ate 2 plates," a third whispered, his voice breaking. "2." The words spread quickly, bouncing off the walls, making the moment heavier. Some aliens leaned forward, staring with fascination. Others pushed back their chairs, ready to run in case something went wrong. A few had their recorders up, small glowing devices capturing every second. History was happening inside these yellow-lit walls, and none of them wanted to miss it. The waitress took a step closer, her hands tight around the tray. Her heart pounded as she looked down at the human. "Sir, you can't keep doing this," she whispered, her voice almost begging, but the human only gave her a calm smile, his eyes steady. "I already did," he said quietly, and the words sent another wave of murmurs through the diner. The kitchen door creaked open, cooks peeking with wide eyes. Even they could not stay hidden anymore, their whispers joining the crowd. "He should be choking by now," one muttered from the doorway. "Why isn't he in pain?" Another asked, but no answer came, only silence broken by the sound of breathing and gasps. At the back of the room, a tall alien with dark scales stood slowly. His heavy boots thumped against the floor as he stepped closer to the human's table. The whispers quieted, all eyes following him. He leaned forward, his eyes narrow, his voice low but sharp. "What are you?" he demanded. The human looked up at him without fear. His calm expression never wavered, his tone steady. "I'm hungry," he said, and then leaned back in his chair again. The words were simple, but they cut through the silence like a blade. The scaled alien flinched, stepping back slowly, uncertain now. The whispers returned, louder, mixed with disbelief and awe. "He doesn't fear it," someone muttered. "Maybe he's immune," another said. "No, he's more than human." A voice whispered from the corner, almost trembling. The words spread fast, and the rumor began to grow. The waitress clutched her tray tighter, her golden eyes burning with fear and confusion. This wasn't normal, this wasn't science. This wasn't possible. She had seen strong warriors fall. She had seen medics fail. She had seen death take victims faster than anyone could blink. And yet here sat a man who treated it like nothing more than dinner. Her lips parted and her voice shook as she whispered, "Why aren't you afraid?" The human's eyes flicked to hers, calm, almost soft. "Because fear doesn't change the taste," he said, and his words made her chest tighten. For the first time in her life, she felt her world tilt, as if rules she had always trusted no longer existed. Around the room, the whispers turned to arguments. "He must be lying," some insisted. "No, he's proof humans are stronger than we thought," others argued. "He's a monster," one hissed, while another shouted back, "No, he's a miracle." The diner shook with voices, the air thick with tension and disbelief. The waitress stared at him, her hands trembling harder. She wanted to drag him away, to protect him, to protect everyone from what might come next. But her body stayed frozen, caught between fear and something else, something that looked like awe. The human sat silently, calm among the chaos. He did not flinch, he did not argue. He did not even defend himself, he simply waited, as if he had expected this reaction all along, as if he had been through it before. And the diner's whispers grew louder, pressing against the walls, threatening to break them. The waitress's golden eyes stayed on him, wide and trembling for the first time in her life. She was not sure if she wanted to run away from this human or step closer. But one thing was clear. One truth burned inside her chest. This night, this diner, and her own life would never return to normal again. The whispers did not fade, they grew heavier, pressing against the walls of the diner like a storm that refused to break. Every eye in the room was locked on the human who sat calmly at the center table, his hands steady, his breathing even. The alien waitress could not look away, her golden eyes wide, her heart beating so loudly she thought others might hear it. The man should have been lying on the floor, his body broken by the poison that lived inside the dish, but he was still sitting tall. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. Her tray pressed against her chest as if it could shield her from what she was seeing. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke, soft but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You don't understand what you're doing," she whispered. The human turned his head toward her, his calm gaze steady. "I understand more than you think," he said. Her breath caught, her chest tightening. "No," she hissed under her breath, her golden eyes glowing faintly as fear rose inside her. "You don't know what's inside that food. You don't know what it does to blood, to bones, to the mind. It kills slowly. It burns from within." Her words made the crowd lean closer, their whispers turning into gasps. But the human only leaned back in his chair, his hands folded casually. "I know enough," he replied quietly. his voice carrying a strange weight. The waitress shook her head, her throat dry. "No, you don't, because no one has ever eaten it twice and lived," she whispered. "No one." The diner erupted again, voices colliding like thunder. "He can't survive," one alien shouted. "He already has." Another answered. "Maybe it hasn't started yet," someone muttered in fear. The waitress's hands grew colder, her body tense. She remembered the training manuals, the health codes, the warnings stamped in red across every chart. That dish was never meant for humans. Not for their weak blood, not for their fragile organs. Even strong alien warriors trembled before it, some refusing to order it at all. And yet here was a man who had eaten it twice, sitting calmly as if nothing mattered. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" she asked, her tone full of desperation. The human's eyes softened for a moment, his calm face betraying a flicker of something deeper. "Because sometimes, the only way to prove you're alive is to do what no one believes you can," he said. Her golden eyes widened, her chest shivered at his words. There was something strange about him. Something beyond madness, beyond hunger. It was as if he was carrying a secret, a truth buried inside his calm voice that no one could yet see, and it frightened her more than the poison itself. Around them, the diner filled with movement. Chairs scraping, recorders blinking. Aliens pressed closer to the table, their eyes glowing with fear and curiosity. Some were already whispering about taking his blood, about studying him, about discovering why he had survived. The waitress's hands tightened around her tray, her instincts screaming that this man was no longer safe. Her heart raced as she leaned closer, her voice trembling. "You have to leave before they decide you're not a man but a test subject," she whispered. But the human only chuckled softly, shaking his head. "They won't take me," he said simply, as if it was the most obvious truth in the galaxy. The waitress felt her stomach twist. She could see the way the crowd's eyes burned brighter, the way their whispers carried sharper edges. They weren't just curious anymore, they were hungry for answers, for proof, for something they could not explain, and she realized the real danger had nothing to do with the food. The danger was the people watching. Her golden eyes shifted across the diner, seeing the way some aliens had already stood, their faces tight with suspicion. A few had moved toward the door, blocking it quietly. Others whispered into communication devices, their words too soft to hear but heavy enough to make her chest clench. The waitress felt a wave of dread wash over her. She turned back to the human, her voice breaking. "They won't let you walk out," she whispered. "You don't know what you've done." The human tilted his head, his calm eyes locking onto hers again. "Yes, I do," he said. "I reminded them that humans don't break as easily as they think." Her knees weakened. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but she could already see the danger closing in. The whispers had grown into sharp murmurs, and the air felt heavier with every passing second. She realized then that the food was never the real risk. The real risk was what came next. The diner had stopped being a place for meals, it had become a trap, a cage, a place where one man's survival had turned into everyone else's obsession. And as the alien waitress stared at the human who sat so calmly, her golden eyes wide with fear, she knew something unseen and dangerous was already beginning. The diner was no longer calm. The whispers had turned into a storm of voices, some sharp with fear, some loud with disbelief. The alien waitress stood frozen at the human's side, her golden eyes darting nervously between him and the restless crowd. She could feel the tension rising like a wave that was about to crash. Then the human spoke again, his voice steady, cutting through the chaos. "Bring me another," he said. The words struck the room like thunder. The waitress's chest tightened, her hands trembling so badly she almost dropped her tray. Gasps filled the diner. Some aliens shouted in protest, others laughed nervously, but no one could look away. A scaled alien slammed his fist on the table, his voice sharp with fury. "This is madness. No human survives 3 plates. You'll die here in front of us all." But the human only leaned back, calm and unshaken. His lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes steady. "Then watch closely," he said. The scaled alien faltered, his rage cracking into unease. The waitress wanted to scream at him, to beg him to stop, her voice caught in her throat. But duty pulled her toward the kitchen once again. Her legs felt heavy, her chest tight, and every step she took felt like she was walking toward doom. The cook stared at her in disbelief when she placed the order slip down. "No," one hissed, his many eyes wide. "You can't," another said, backing away as if the paper itself was cursed. "He will not survive this. And neither will this diner, one muttered. But the waitress only whispered, her voice shaking. He asked for it. The cooks reluctantly prepared the dish. The glow was stronger this time. The steam sharp enough to sting her eyes as she carried it out. The entire diner went silent when she stepped through the doors, every gaze fixed on the steaming plate in her hands. Her legs shook, her golden eyes flicking toward the human. He sat calmly waiting, his hands folded neatly on the table. She placed the plate before him, her throat dry, her chest heavy. Please, she whispered under her breath. Don't do this again, but he didn't answer. He picked up the fork, cut into the glowing food, and lifted a piece. The room froze. Time itself seemed to stop, and then he ate. The silence shattered. Gasps erupted like an explosion. Voices rose. Chairs scraped against the floor. Some aliens stood, clutching their heads in disbelief. Others backed away, their bodies shaking with fear. The waitress pressed a hand against her chest, her golden eyes wide. She watched as he chewed slowly, swallowed, and then leaned back in his chair with the same calm smile. Better the third time, he murmured, his voice smooth and steady. The diner erupted again, but this time with panic. He's not human, one alien cried. He's cursed, another shouted. No, he's chosen. A trembling voice argued from the corner, the air filled with shouts, gasps, and whispers louder than before. The waitress could barely breathe, her hands shook violently, her chest heaving with fear. She stepped closer to him, her voice trembling. Why? Why are you doing this to yourself? The human turned his calm eyes toward her. To remind them, he said softly, his voice steady even as chaos raged around him. Remind them of what? She whispered, her throat dry. That humans don't break when others think they should, he said. Her heart pounded, her golden eyes shimmering with disbelief. She had never heard words like that, never seen someone face death so casually. She wanted to argue, to fight his madness, but deep inside she felt something else stir, a strange, frightening respect that made her chest ache. Around them, the diner was no longer safe. The crowd had grown louder, some shouting for his arrest, others demanding he prove himself again. A few whispered darkly about experiments, about taking him apart to learn his secret. The waitress's fear deepened. She leaned closer, her voice a desperate whisper. You have to leave, they won't let this go. They'll come for you. But the human only chuckled softly, shaking his head. Let them try, he said. The room roared with voices, some filled with awe, some with rage. The human sat calmly at the center of it all, unshaken, unmoved, unafraid, and the alien waitress, her golden eyes locked on him, knew one truth. This was no longer just about food. This was about something far greater, something the galaxy was not ready to see. And as she stood trembling, the human's calm words echoed in her mind. Not just a statement, but a warning. Watch closely, he had said. And the whole diner would never forget what they had witnessed. The diner was a storm. Voices clashed like thunder. Chairs scraped against the floor, and the air was so heavy with fear and wonder that it was hard to breathe. The human sat at the center table, calm, unshaken, while the world around him burned with disbelief. His eyes were steady, his hands resting casually, as if the chaos meant nothing to him. But for the alien waitress, it was unbearable. Her golden eyes shimmered with fear. Her chest rose and fell with quick, shallow breaths. She clutched her tray so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Every instinct screamed at her to pull him away, to save him, to stop this madness before it destroyed them both. Finally, she could take it no longer. She stepped forward, her voice cracking, loud enough to cut through the storm of voices. Stop! She shouted, her golden eyes blazing. The diner froze, all eyes swinging to her. She stood trembling beside the human, her hands shaking. You don't understand what he's done, she whispered, her voice sharp but weak. Her words made the room lean closer, the whispers falling silent, and then she confessed. That dish, she said, her voice trembling, was never meant for humans, never even meant for most of us. It was created as a trial food, a poison disguised as a meal, a challenge for warriors, a test for the desperate. Gasps filled the diner, the crowd shifting uneasily. Those who eat it, she continued, her chest tightening. Their blood burns, their bones weaken. Their mind cracks like glass. No one has ever eaten it more than once and lived. The silence after her words was deeper than anything before. Every alien stared at the human, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. The waitress lowered her head, her golden eyes shimmering with fear and sorrow. You shouldn't be alive, she whispered, her voice breaking. The human turned toward her, his calm gaze steady. Yet for the first time, she thought she saw something else flicker in his eyes. Not fear, not pride, but something softer. Understanding. He spoke quietly, his voice gentle. And yet, I am. Her throat tightened, her chest heavy. She felt tears sting her golden eyes, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of what she had seen. Her hands trembled as she leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear. Tell me the truth, what are you? No human survives this, no human. The man smiled faintly. Not mocking, not cruel, but calm. I'm just hungry, he said softly. But she knew that wasn't the truth, not the full truth. Her chest ached as she realized he was hiding something far greater. The crowd erupted again, but now their voices carried a new edge. Some shouted in awe, calling him chosen, a miracle, proof of human strength. Others hissed in fear, muttering about curses, about experiments, about locking him away. The tension in the air felt like it might snap at any moment. The waitress's golden eyes darted around. She could see the way some aliens shifted toward the door. Blocking the exits, others whispered into devices, their eyes burning with greed or fear. Her stomach twisted, dread washing over her. She turned back to the human, her voice desperate. You have to run. You don't know what they'll do to you, she whispered. But he only leaned forward slightly, his calm eyes holding hers. They won't touch me, he said, because they've already seen what happens when they underestimate humans. Her chest heaved, her golden eyes trembling with fear and confusion. She wanted to argue, but deep inside, a part of her wanted to believe him. She had never seen anyone face such danger without trembling. Never seen anyone break the impossible and then smile. It terrified her, and yet it pulled her closer. The diner grew louder again. Voices clashing, footsteps shuffling. Some wanted him worshipped. Some wanted him caged. Some wanted him dead. But the waitress knew one thing clearly. Whatever happened next, it would not be small. It would not be forgotten. Her voice broke as she whispered again, almost pleading, Please, don't eat it again. The human's lips curved into that same calm smile. He didn't answer, not directly, but his steady gaze told her enough. He was not finished. And as her golden eyes locked onto his calm face, the waitress realized the truth she had tried to deny. This man was not just rewriting the rules of survival. He was changing everything right here in her diner. The diner was no longer just a diner. It had become a legend, a place where fear and wonder were carved into every chair, every wall, every whispered memory. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of what had just happened, and at the center sat the human, calm, steady, as if nothing had changed at all, but everything had changed. The alien waitress stood close to him, her golden eyes trembling with emotion. She had confessed the truth, revealed the deadly risk, begged him to stop, and yet, he still sat there alive, breathing, stronger than anyone could explain. The crowd did not know what to do. Some shouted that he was cursed, others that he was chosen. Some wanted to worship him, some wanted to cage him, and some wanted to tear him apart. The noise was deafening, the tension unbearable. The human finally stood, his chair scraping softly against the floor. The sound silenced the entire diner. All eyes locked on him, waiting for what he would do next. His calm gaze swept across the room, his steady voice cutting through the silence. You came here to watch me die, he said, his tone neither angry nor proud. But you forgot something. Humans don't die just because others expect them to. Gasps echoed through the room. The waitress felt her chest tighten, her golden eyes stinging with unshed tears. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't boasting, but his words carried the weight of something greater, something that made even the angriest aliens fall silent. The scaled alien from earlier stepped forward again, his fists clenched. You broke the law of nature, he growled. You should not exist. The human turned his calm gaze toward him, his lips curving into the faintest smile. Maybe your law was wrong, he replied. The room erupted again. But this time the voices were not just fear, they were awe. For the first time, aliens looked at a human not as weak, not as fragile, but as something else entirely. The waitress could feel it, the shift in the air. This man had changed their world with nothing more than 3 plates of forbidden food. She stepped closer, her voice shaking. What will you do now? She whispered. The human's eyes softened as he looked at her. I'll leave, he said simply, but they'll remember. Her golden eyes widened, her heart heavy. She wanted to stop him, to ask more, to understand the secret he carried inside. But before she could speak, he placed a hand on the table, steady and calm, and then he turned, walking toward the door. The crowd parted slowly. No one dared stop him. No one dared touch him. Some looked away in fear. Others leaned forward in awe. The sound of his boots against the floor echoed louder than the shouts that had filled the diner moments before. The bell above the door rang as he pushed it open. Cold night air rushed inside, carrying the scent of rain and distant smoke. The human stepped into the darkness without looking back, and the door closed softly behind him. For a long moment, no one moved. The diner was silent again, but this silence was not ordinary. It was heavy, unforgettable, alive with the memory of what they had seen. The waitress stood frozen, her golden eyes locked on the door. Her chest ached, her throat tight. She knew the truth now. He was not just a man, not just a traveler. He was something the galaxy had never seen before, and she had been the one to stand closest. To watch with her own eyes, the crowd began to murmur again. Already the stories were being told, twisted, exaggerated. He ate death itself and laughed, someone whispered. He cannot be killed, another said. No, a trembling voice argued. He chose not to die. The waitress pressed a hand to her chest. Her golden eyes shimmering with tears she could no longer hold back. She whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. He was human, and yet she knew that word no longer meant what it once did. Not after tonight, not after what she had seen. The diner would never forget. The city would never forget. The galaxy itself would whisper this story. Of the human who sat calmly, ate the impossible, and walked away. And in the deepest part of her heart, the alien waitress knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of something far greater. A story that had just taken its first breath. Inside her small diner that would never be ordinary again,